Number 15. Peter Pan. What's not to love about the film that even Michael Jackson himself considered to be his all-time favorite? Peter Pan just has something for everyone. Exotic lands, flying, mermaids, Indians, pirates, just the adventure in general. And that's pretty much what makes this an enjoyable film, the feel of adventure. It's not as big on character development as other Disney films, but it's still a ton of fun. The characters for the most part aren't really anything that special. Peter Pan himself is kind of just a cocky show-off preteen, which by the way, a prepubescent boy who sneaks into nurseries and gets children a special dust that makes them think they can fly? Ruin everyone's childhood with that image in their head. John and Michael are just the generic younger brothers, the Lost Boys are just the generic trollmakers. However, there are three characters that do stick out, at least for me. The first being Tinkerbell, who, as we all know, has become one of Disney's many spokes characters, alongside Mickey Mouse and Jiminy Cricket. She would go on to be one of Disney's most iconic characters, having her in the introduction of many of the Disney films, giving her her own straight-to-DVD series, and apparently they have recently confirmed that she will get her own live-action movie where Reese Witherspoon will play as her. As for the character herself, yeah, throughout the film she can come off as hot-tempered, stubborn, and jealous, but he does get some redemption at the end. People always debate whether Tink had a crush on Peter, but Margaret Carey, who was also the live-action reference model and the voice of the red-headed mermaid, has said, and I quote, "Tinkerbell was never in love with Peter Pan. She was sort of a groupie. Peter would go on his adventures, and she would get to go with him. And what she was really worried about with Wendy was that maybe he wouldn't take her on the adventures anymore. He would take that ugly old girl. So that's what she was jealous of." That does make Tink more relatable when you think about it. Then there's Wendy, who even as a kid I've always found as the most interesting child character. Catherine Beaumont, the voice of Alice, returns to play this part, and once again she does a great job taking someone who could be a bland, nice girl, but is still a very fun-loving character. She's very imaginative and maternal, but at the same time, much like Mabel from Gravity Falls, she does have this fear of growing up and finds comfort in the stories of Peter Pan. This, along with Tinkerbell, does make her the most relatable character in the film, but in her brief time in Neverland, she does accept the fact that she will become an adult one day, but despite that, she doesn't allow it to ruin her wonderful imagination. And then there's my absolute favorite character in the film, Captain Hook. Of all the versions out there, this is my favorite. Not to say the others are bad. Dustin Hoffman is over-the-top fun, Jason Isaac is threatening, and as for Colin O'Donoghue, used to be awesome, but as of lately, yeah, I'd rather not go there. With that said, this Hook has always been the one I think of. He's just the perfect balance of comical, charisma, persuasion, and intimidating. And the bits with him, Smee, and the crocodile are some of Disney's funniest moments. Apart from what I've just listed, there isn't much else for me to talk about with the film. Well, actually there are two other things. One is the romance between Peter and Wendy, which is actually kind of sweet when you look at it. Okay, so they don't end up together in the end, but the fact that it's not overdone or done in the usual Disney romance formula is unique at the time. Wendy, you can tell, wants it, and Peter, well, just doesn't know what to make of it. That's kind of how kids tend to fall in love in real life. The other thing is the controversy revolving around the Indians. People nowadays see them as offensive, the way they look, the way they speak, the fact the Lost Boys go to hunt for them like wild animals, the fact that Hook refers to them as redskins. Personally, I never found them to be that insulting. Maybe it's like the crows from Dumbo or the Siamese cats from Lady and the Tramp, in that it's the product of the time. This is how they were portrayed in films back in those days, and to the film's credit, they are good guys here. I don't know, people tend to get offended way too easily these days. It may not be the most complex of the bunch, but Peter Pan is an enjoyable Disney film full of energy and imagination. Number 14. Mulan. Most people tend to find this movie just to be okay, and I will admit it may not be one of the stronger Disney flicks, but it's still a film I do enjoy to watch. First of all, the animation. I just love this Chinese style that isn't really used all that often now when I think about it. The way the film presents this world and the culture is just amazing. Although I will admit the scenery is nice, but it looks nicer in other Chinese-themed animated films like Kung Fu Panda. Secondly, I love the songs. While they may not be as memorable as Be Our Guest or Let It Go, they are still fun songs. I know most people love I'll Make a Man Out of You, which is a really good song and I do enjoy it. But my favorite song is Reflection. It's just so beautiful and graceful, and Lea Salonga does a great job providing the singing voice. And third, the characters. The film just has such a great cast. You have Mushu as the humorous but also loyal sidekick. Ling, Yao, and Shenpo make a great trio of funny but still lovable soldiers. But there are two characters that stand out for me. One being the villain Shan Yu. Now, I know most people find Shan Yu to be a bland, forgettable bad guy. And, okay, I'm not gonna lie, he's not as grand as Maleficent or Jafar. Personally, I find him to be a pretty epic antagonist. I just love how he's supposed to be this barbaric warlord, and yet he's so calm and low-voiced. He has this sense of sophistication and elegance. I just think that's pretty awesome. He's this big brute, but doesn't just run around screaming and yelling and destroying everything in his path. He's intelligent and clever. Even some of the things he says, despite being calm about it, are still so threatening.
Besides, the little girl will be missing her doll. We should return it to her.
But the other character I absolutely love is the title character herself, Fa Mulan. You know how I said that Dr. Facilier is not just my favorite Disney villain, but my favorite villain, period? Well, the same thing can be said with Mulan. Not only is she one of my favorite Disney heroes, but one of my absolute favorite heroes in all of media. Yeah, you can keep Batman, you can keep Luke Skywalker, you can keep Katniss Everdeen. This is the hero I love the most. I love her design, I love her voice, but most of all, I love her role in the film. Mulan is someone we've seen in films before, someone who's trying to be something more than what others think of her, and wants to prove to the world that she can do some good, and not just some average woman waiting for a man. Yeah, we've seen this trope before, but the way it's executed is just great. The risk she makes to join the army when her father's too weak to fight shows how much she cares about her family. Even though if she is caught, it would dishonor them for a generation. And when she is found out later on, instead of being executed, Shang spares her life, considering she saved his, and tells her to go home. But even with that, when she finds that Shan Yu has survived the avalanche, she still goes to find the army to warn them, even though she has been dishonored. This just all shows how much of a great hero she is in the sacrifice she is willing to make. Now, I do have a couple issues with the film. One, I never found Shang to be that interesting. Sure, he's a great leader and he wants to follow in his father's footsteps, but there's really nothing else to him. The only thing that really stands out for me is the fact he's voiced by BD Wan. That's right, Dr. Wu in Jurassic Park and Dr. George Huan in Law & Order Special Victims Unit. Also, while the voice acting is good, I can't help but feel some of it doesn't fit in the ancient Chinese setting. As much as I love Mushu, Eddie Murphy's performance, while nice and can bring some laughs, really does stick out like a sore thumb. And George Takei as the first ancestor, again, good performance, but really sticks out. While it isn't as strong or powerful as some of Disney's other works, Mulan is still a film I relatively enjoy. It has great action, beautiful animation, funny humor, a great story, and home to one of my favorite heroes in all of fiction. Number 13. Pinocchio. Pinocchio is very unique for a Disney film. Heck, it's unique for a family movie in general. And a lot of it comes from the moral and how it's portrayed. But before I get into that spiel, let's talk about the animation and the characters. Considering that this film was released in 1940, the animation is astounding, even to this day. It definitely was an improvement since Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and what I mean by that is the various locations that the animators were able to put together. From silliness of Geppetto's workshop, to the mysterious Pleasure Island, to the depths of the ocean. You can tell they really went all out in terms of location. As for the characters, I find it interesting that two of them would eventually become part of the same franchise as Mickey and Friends. I'm of course talking about Figaro and Jiminy Cricket. Interesting enough, Figaro was apparently Walt Disney's favorite character in the film. He loved the little kid so much that he wanted him to appear as much as possible in his other works. This would lead him to have his own shorts and eventually become the pet of Minnie Mouse. As for Jiminy Cricket, I know there's some people that don't like him all that much, but I never really had much of a problem with him. I do like his wisecracking but also optimistic personality, and just like Figaro, he too would go on to appear in many other things. From his own series of shorts titled I'm No Fool,
Oh, I'm no fool, no siree. I want to live to be 93. I play safe for you and me, 'cause I'm no fool.
His role as the ghost of Christmas Past in Mickey's Christmas Carol, his role as a guide in Kingdom Hearts, and as a supporting cast in Once Upon a Time. As for the other characters, there's Pinocchio himself, who is actually a pretty likable and relatable child character. Sure, he's gullible, oblivious, and at times wants to do bad and naughty things, but you know, that's what kids do in real life. What's important is that the child learns their lesson in the end and tries to become a better person, and Pinocchio does just that. Geppetto is also pretty lovable. Much like with Cinderella, he too is pretty humble and positive. I mean, aside from Figaro and Cleo, he's all alone. For all we know, he has no family, and yet despite that, he still remains kind and good-hearted as he spreads happiness and joy to all the children with the toys he makes. And then there are the villains, which the film has quite the collection. From the cruel puppeteer Stromboli, the wicked coachman, the colossal Monstro, and my personal favorites, the comical but sly duo, Honest John and Gideon. I just love how they have the perfect balance of being both funny and silly, but also so sly and vile.
Tarzan. No, stupid. Don't be crude. Let me handle this.
But what I especially love about this movie is its moral and how it is told. Remember how most people think Cinderella's moral is be a good person and good things will eventually happen? Well, that's more of this film's moral, except it's more on the lines of be a good person and good things will eventually happen, or else. Sure, the message by itself is fine and all, but it's how this film presents it, giving us some of the most horrifying and unsettling scenes in any animated film. It's also one of the few times in an animated film where the villains get away with their crimes. Honest John and Gideon have their reward money and are continuing to manipulate more little boys. The coachman is making money off of the kids who are now donkeys and can no longer talk. And I don't think I want to know what happens to those who can still talk. Yeah, this is all incredibly heavy for a family film, but it does work in that it does get its message across. In order to get through life, you have to have an understanding of the difference between right and wrong. But even good people can still be tempted to do bad things. In fact, why do you think the villains, particularly Honest John, are never defeated? Because they are pretty much the living embodiments of temptation, something that can never truly be destroyed. Sure, we may be able to overcome these obstacles as time goes on, but we will always be tempted to do something wrong through our entire lives. And this is where I think the song When You Wish Upon a Star comes into play. Now, despite this pretty much being Disney's anthem, the song has, of course, spurred some controversy. People often say this song promotes laziness, which again, I have to disagree with. Sure, Geppetto wished for Pinocchio to be a real boy, but the Blue Fairy only made part of his wish come true. All she did was bring Pinocchio to life. If he wants to be a real boy like Geppetto wished for, he has to earn it. And through the course of the film, he learns about honesty, loyalty, obedience, and in the end, courage and self-sacrifice. In the midst of saving Geppetto from Monstro, Pinocchio ends up sacrificing his life. Remember this lyric in the song? Because of Pinocchio's love for his father and his selflessness was so strong, his wish finally came true and he finally became a real boy. Now, if I do have to make one critique, and this is just a nitpick, how is the coachman able to turn the children into donkeys? Seriously, it's never explained. Is it like Mr. Dark's Pandemonium Carnival where it's dark magic or something? Again, just nitpicking. Dark and horrifying, but also bright and hopeful, Pinocchio is easily one of Walt Disney's masterpieces at its best. Number 12. The Lion King. That's right, folks. The film that many consider to be one of Disney's greatest 2D animated films is not even in my top 10 favorites. Well, like I said, folks, these are my personal favorites, and everyone's list can be different. And also, I do kind of find this film somewhat overrated. That doesn't mean this is a bad film by any means, of course. If anything, this is one of the most stunning animated films out there. Okay, so what do I love about this film? First of all, the animation. It really is some of the most beautiful 2D animation out there. And not just on the characters, the backgrounds look amazing, whether it be Pride Rock, the elephant graveyard, the canyon, the jungles. The way they are all animated, they just look so massive. Secondly, the music, and I'm not talking about the songs here. Okay, the songs are catchy, memorable, and great. Circle of Life is just huge. I Just Can't Wait to Be King and Hakuna Matata are both fun. Can You Feel the Love Tonight is pretty cheesy, but it's okay. Although I prefer Elton John's version more.
Can you feel the love tonight?
And then my favorite song, Be Prepared. It just makes such a great villain song.
Undisputed, respected, saluted, and seen for the wonder I am. Yes, my teeth and ambitions are bared. Be prepared.
But what I really love is the instrumentals. The music that Hans Zimmer himself composed. This is some of his best work, right up there with The Dark Knight. From Simba marching up Pride Rock to the climax to that wildebeest stampede. Seriously, right up there with Duel of Fates from Star Wars The Phantom Menace. This is one of my favorite instrumentals out there. Third, the story. Which, looking back on it, I never realized how adult this film really is. In fact, this could be up there with Fantasia and Zootopia as one of Disney's most adult and mature animated films. Which I guess makes sense, since this is based on William Shakespeare's Hamlet, which is a very adult story. I mean, the film does have a lot of silly and lighthearted moments, particularly those involving Zazu, Rafiki, the hyenas, and of course Timon and Pumbaa, who would eventually go on to star in their own TV show and in their own film. But apart from that, the film does take itself very seriously, in that it doesn't sugarcoat or talk down to its audience like they're idiots. And this is best shown at the end of the wildebeest scene, where Disney does the inevitable. They have the villain kill a main character on screen.
Long live the king.
And if that wasn't enough, they even show the dead body. That doesn't happen very often in family movies. So there is a lot of stuff I love about this movie, so why do I, along with many other people, consider it to be overrated? Well, for me anyway, there are two things. One, it's the characters. Now let me be clear, I do like all these characters. They're all fun and memorable, it's just I wouldn't put them as some of my Disney favorites. Like, Scar is a great villain, but I wouldn't call him one of Disney's greatest. Sure, Jeremy Irons does a great job providing the voice, he has an awesome villain song like I said, and he does succeed to kill off a main character, but then in the second half of the film he acts less epic and awesome and more like a spoiled brat. In fact, I find Zira from the sequel to be more interesting than him, which I guess makes sense since lionesses do more work than the males. Timon and Pumbaa are funny, hilarious, and do make great sidekicks. Zazu has some witty lines, Rafiki is a wise but wacky mentor, and the hyenas are definitely the most sinister of all the Disney henchmen. Yeah, they can be funny and buffoonish, but they can also be straight up sadistic. You know how everyone makes a big deal over Mufasa's death? Well, how come nobody brings up that this is the first time in a Disney film where the henchmen straight up kill their boss? And the fact that hyenas are one of the few predators that actually eat their victims alive only makes the scene more graphic.
No, let me explain. No, you don't understand. No, I didn't mean... No, I didn't... My hands, no.
Simba and Nala, on the other hand, I find to be pretty bland. I mean, when they are cubs, they are fun and enjoyable, but as adults, there's really not much to them. And I do blame most of it on the voice acting. I think it shouldn't be a surprise to many people when I say that Matthew Broderick is not one of my favorite actors. Just like his performances in 1998 Godzilla and the Inspector Gadget film, he is pretty wooden in this film. And Moria Kelly isn't that much better. I don't hate them, they really aren't all that interesting. The other reason I consider this film to be overrated is the message. Now, it is a really good message, but it's the way it's executed. In fact, Doug Walker said it best in his Disney December review.
Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it.
Now that's really clever, and I'm totally behind that. What I'm not behind is that when he does go back to face his fears start to win, and everything he was taught before suddenly is working against him. Nobody even gets behind him. Nobody's standing up for him. That is until it turns out he didn't commit the crime that he thought he did. So, I guess the moral of the story is never take responsibility for what you've done because nobody will be behind you unless it turns out you didn't really do it. Yeah, how is this confronting his past? It's a past that never happened, so it doesn't matter. And even when he thought it did happen, the movie didn't support him. Almost as if the film was saying if he did accidentally kill his father, he deserves to die. Look, nobody's on his side until he comes out and says, haha, it wasn't me. And I'm sorry, that's a serious flaw. If you think it's something that just my over-analyzing adult mind thought of, no, I was thinking of this as a kid, too. This film didn't teach me to come forward with my mistakes and to take the responsibility for it. It taught me to convince people that I didn't do the mistake, because that way I'll have a happy ending.
That's actually a good point. At least it tries to get its message across, unlike other animated films that was released that same year. It's big, it's powerful, it's beautiful, it has great music. While it may have some flaws, The Lion King is still a wonderful piece of Disney art. Number 11. Tarzan. While most people went nuts over The Lion King when they were young, for me, it was this film. Okay, I did watch The Lion King a lot, but I think I may have watched this film way more. I even watched the television series quite a bit too, and even to this day, the film still holds up fine for me. The animation is just great. Not just on the characters or the backgrounds, I'm talking about the scenes where Tarzan is swinging on the vines and surfing on the tree branches. It's just incredible how the animators were able to put this all together. They even based Tarzan's surfing moves from Tony Hawk's skateboarding skills. The music is also really good. Okay, I know some people have complained about the use of Phil Collins singing in this film, saying things like these songs feel more like they belong on the radio, not in a Disney film. What does Phil Collins have to do with Disney, and so on and so on. Now, I do see where they are coming from. We are used to the usual Disney trope where the characters bring in the songs and are fitting to what's going on. But with this film, I don't mind the songs. I do love Two Worlds, I do love Son of Man, I do love Strangers Like Me. And You'll Be In My Heart is just beautiful. It's one of my absolute favorite songs to come out of a Disney film, or just a film in general.
Yes, you'll be in my home.
Also, when you really think about it, it does make some sense to not have some of these characters to just break into songs right out of nowhere, since Tarzan himself is only just learning to speak English with the help of Jane for the first time. How the heck is he going to just sing on the spot? But it's not just the songs. Much like with The Lion King, the instrumentals is what really gets me. Whether it's during the chase scene with the baboons, the epic climax, and of course, the scene where Kala shows Tarzan the treehouse. It's just beautiful. And then there's the characters. Tarzan himself is a pretty good character. He's a great swinger and fighter, but also is kind of good-hearted. Jane is a very fun female lead. She can be fun, nice, and caring, but also feisty and skittish. Which makes sense, since she is in the jungle outside her comfort zone. Her father, Professor Porter, is pretty funny. I know some people find Turk and Tantor to be annoying, but personally, I always love these two. Wayne Knight does a hilarious job as Tantor, and while I'm not the biggest fan of Rosie O'Donnell, I thought she put on a good performance as Turk. I mean, it was her dream to voice a Disney character, and it did come true. Clayton is an okay villain, but personally I find his sister Lady Walton from the show to be way more interesting. However, there is one thing that does stand out about Clayton for most people. His death scene. You thought Scar's death was gruesome? Get a load of this! That is probably one of the most graphic death scenes in a Disney film, as well as the most poetic. What do I mean when I say that? Well, if you watch the director's commentary of the film, this is what the crew said about this scene. What makes a great villain is that they are the dark reflection of the hero. Clayton grew up in civilized society, and while he may portray himself as a gentleman, at his core, he is a pure savage, unlike Tarzan, who actually grew up in the jungle. His policy is to just shoot and never ask questions, believing himself a real man by doing so. He shows no real compassion for life, even human life. In this fight, we see just as how animalistic he really is, attacking like a wild animal, seeing Tarzan as nothing but prey, thinking only of how to kill him and giving no pause for sense or reason, which ultimately was his own end. Never would I imagine to hear that kind of literary symbolism in a family movie. But of all the characters in the film, Kala and Kerchak I find are the most unique. On one hand, you have Kala, who is accepting of having Tarzan as their son, whereas Kerchak is very hesitant. Which is understandable, he lost their only child to Sabor the leopard, but after Tarzan kills Sabor, he does start to soften up to him, but it isn't until the end when Kerchak tries to save Tarzan from Clayton and ends up getting shot in the process. And in the end, right before he dies, Kerchak finally accepts Tarzan as his son. It's just such a powerful and emotional moment. And that's another thing I love about this movie. Much like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, it is just fueled on emotion. It will have moments that make you happy, moments that make you laugh, moments that make you scared, and most of all, moments that will make you sad and torn up. The scene where Tarzan says goodbye to his mother is just so heart-wrenching. Yeah, we know he comes back in the end, but at the time, they don't know that. They honestly believe this will be the last time they'll ever see each other. It has action, excitement, humor, and emotion. Tarzan is a film I've watched many times in the past, and it's one I will watch many times in the future.